So Mike Pompeo and Miles Yu came to Bay Area last weekend, and then what did they bring to us? There's a Hong Kong, former Hong Kong industrialist, one of the earliest businessmen from Hong Kong, and his name is Emma Yuan, and he founded an organization called Hong Kong Freedom Beacon. Hong Kong Freedom Beacon was founded recently, and then it's mainly a Hong Kong American organization. And then they invited Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of the State, and his top China advisor, Miles Yu, to Bay Area to have this 2-day and 3 events, and to speak to the public. And then altogether, 2,400 people showed up. Okay, and then that was quite successful, and was surprising to many people. Anyway, so what we're concerned about is what did Pompeo and Miles Yu bring to the people in Bay Area?
All right. Yeah. So one thing, I think one theme we would what we got from their speeches is why the U.S.-China policy established. Was actually had a fundamental change under the Trump administration, and why it's not easily reversed. So Miles Yu, in his speech at the dinner event on I think that's the 16th, and he started to his speech saying that he had such a pleasure to work for the greatest Secretary of State in American history, which is Mike Pompeo.
Yeah. After on the January 20th, on the very day of and Pompeo leave the White House, and not the White House, he leave the State Department. Actually, the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, and sanctioned him.
Yeah,
okay? and he's the number one in the sanction list.
Right, and Miles Yu said that's a badge of honor.
That's a badge of honor.
Yeah, but he said actually this sanction really actually spelled out a very important message by the CCP.
Mm-hmm.
They sanctioned Secretary Pompeo because they say he will no longer be able to work in the corporate world dealing with China in any fashion whatsoever. So that means they have getting the habit of using their communist money to buy American senior leaders. And they think this is going to break his will to serve the American interest.
Yeah, so basically Miles Yu had his interpretation for us. He said that that shows how CCP used money through those American corporations to buy off the U.S. senior officials.
Yeah. So I think that's the one of the the ways that the CCP infiltrates our country through those public officials. And Miles Yu also just reminded people the meaning of Hong Kong. He said that Hong Kong's CCP, because the meaning of Hong Kong is very important, because CCP is on a chain of aggression. After Hong Kong, if there's nothing to be done, it could be the next one could be Taiwan, next one could be Vietnam, India, those other South Asian countries.
We better stop this trend. The way the world made a huge mistake in March 1938 is because we did not stop Hitler. Right after the Einschlag of Austria. And then the chain of aggression continued onto Sudetenland, onto Czechoslovakia, onto Poland, and then Soviet Union, and then Great Britain, and then France. So that's why it's so important. Hong Kong's fall is tragedy, but also Hong Kong's fall is also a wake-up call to the rest of the world. And I'm very confident with the leadership demonstrated by Secretary Mike Pompeo. And that cause will have a tremendous bright future. Not just because one person can do the thing, but because look at this enthusiasm look at this incredible devotion to the cause of freedom. And I think, I remain very, very optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then we from former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's speech, we can see that how he truly understands the nature of the CCP, and he also explained that why and how under the Trump administration they fundamentally changed the U.S.-China policy. So he just said one thing, for example, domestically, as a Secretary of State, what he did.
I spent 2 years traveling the world talking about the challenge that the Chinese Communist Party presented to every freedom-loving human being around the world. We woke America up to this. You should know this is at least 20, maybe as much as 50 years of U.S. policy that we had to upend, and that there were people at the State Department who didn't frankly think very much about this project. They'd held and they'd clung to this view that if we just traded a bit more and engaged a bit more, that somehow the Chinese Communist Party would change its stripes. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing.
Yeah, and so Mao Yu actually explained under Pompeo's leadership, he also did a lot of, it can be called the educational sessions, right, to the State Department staff and the other departments staff about just to, tell them about what's the nature of the CCP. And so that's something, never been done, and it had a lot of effect on those people and on the policies. And then Pompeo continued to, to just show how he let more people know about the central challenge of our time from abroad is the Chinese Communist Party.
The central challenge of our times from abroad, the challenge that the Chinese Communist Party presents. We recognized, for 4 years, our administration recognized this reality. We saw the world as it was and not as we wished it to be. And we focused our entire governmental efforts on this. We made sure our allies understood this risk as well. We did so because we know that America is the greatest nation in the history of civilization, and we want it to remain so.